Alright guys, this is our last video for Unit 4, Developmental Psychology, and we're going to go through all the different stages of adulthood. You should have done an activity with these today, so let's jump into it. Young adulthood is characterized by becoming independent from your parental authority and trying new ways of doing things. Marriage is very common in young adulthood, and although most young adults marry because they're in love, over 50% of marriages in the United States actually end in divorce. Some characteristics of young adulthood would be that there's a desire to try new things, test out that independence, and change your relationships with your parents. Go from a more authoritative relationship with your parents to more of an equal ground with your parents as you come into adulthood. They're going to reassess any major life changes, and the mid to late 30s are often characterized by settling down and what we would say planting roots. And this is a really great graphic showing the developmental task of young adulthood. A lot of this is starting, developing, becoming. Development of an identity, or who you are and what you stand for, is an important part of adolescence and young adulthood. And marriage is a big part of that. Over 90% of people in the United States will marry at some point, or 90% of heterosexual people, I should say, will actually marry at some point. But again, 50% of those end in divorce. In most Western society, patriarchy has dominated marriage, which means that this is a male-dominated marriage. But now spouses are more likely to be viewed as equal partners. Before the 1800s, people didn't really marry for love. They married for convenience, and they married for alliance. And today, companionship and intimacy are central to a marriage. And there's a lot of different influences that come into play when you're choosing who you want to be with for the rest of your life. And that can include your culture that you come from, your parents, the level of education, social class, religion, and similarities like age, values, and attitudes. One reason for divorce is because attaining a divorce is easier than it used to be. It's very easy to get a divorce now. You can do a no contest divorce in South Carolina, and your divorce can be final in 2 weeks. And there's lots of reasons that people get a divorce. Financial resources are usually divided in a divorce. Typically in the United States, the mothers usually get primary custody of the children. However, this is a change. This is starting to change a little bit in society, and that doesn't mean that fathers are out of the picture at all. It just means that there's some sort of joint custody arrangement. Children of divorce, this can be very difficult for children no matter what their age. Children of divorced people are more likely to have behavioral problems, engage in substance abuse, and earn lower grades. Boys often have a much harder time than girls adjusting to divorce when their parents decide to go this way. And psychologists usually advise parents who are getting divorced to try to agree on how they're going to interact with their kids, help maintain a good relationship, and avoid criticizing each other in front of their kids. Middle adulthood, some of the characteristics or greatest challenges is the ability to create, originate, and produce. And we're going to talk about what those things mean. During middle adulthood, many adults go through this period of reassessment and reevaluate what to do for the rest of their lives. And this is often called a midlife crisis or a midlife transition. This covers the years from 40 to 65. And Erik Erikson said the greatest challenge facing middle adults is generativity, which is the ability to create, originate, and produce. This adds meaning to the lives of adults and helps them maintain and enhance their self-esteem. The midlife transition is a period of middle adulthood when perspectives can change. And this is usually, sometimes it's called a midlife crisis. Some people just really fall off the deep end and, go sell their house and buy a sports car or something like that. I mean, I think that's a stereotypical idea. But it's also just the time when you finally accept that you are getting older and you decide what you want to do with the rest of your life. And you see some key words here: adjusting, achieving, helping, strengthening. Empty nest syndrome is very common in middle adulthood, and this is the term that's applied to feelings of emptiness and loss that parents feel after their children have left home to establish their own lives, whether that's go to college or just move out and get married. But many people do report positive changes in their lives once their kids are out of the house. Menopause is an important thing that we need to talk about. It usually occurs in a woman's late 40s or 50s and is marked by the end of menstruation. It's totally normal, and it can be healthy for a lot of people. Sometimes menopause has, there's a lot of really crude and inappropriate jokes that go along with menopause, but menopause is actually a very positive thing for a lot of women. Late adulthood, and this is 65 to, or around 65, 66 to the end of your life, and we're going to talk about this. There's a lot of changes in late adulthood. You become a little bit more dependent on your family and people younger than you. There's a lot of social changes, cognitive changes, and just mental changes. Many physical changes take place, and a lot of these physical changes can cause health problems. They can do many things to maintain their health, strength, and energy. And exercise and diet can really help older adults feel better and help them fight disease. The developmental theories that maintain that aging is a result of genetics are called programmed theories. And these theories suggest that heredity and genetics play a significant role in the length of one's life. Cellular damage theories say that cells malfunction as a result of damage, not heredity. And some scientists blame free radicals or unstable molecules in our bodies for damage. And cross-linking can also be another cause of aging, but you don't really need to know that, guys. You do need to know about dementia. Dementia is the serious loss of cognitive functioning, and it happens to almost everybody that gets really on up there in age. People with dementia have major losses in memory, and they have speech or motor problems sometimes. Dementia that occurs after age 65 is called senile dementia. Most cases occur in people over 80, but senile dementia is characterized people, they repeat actions a lot of times. They start to lose their memory. They're starting to, forget where they put things. They're forgetting who people are, and sometimes they can become very rude. Alzheimer's disease is different from dementia. It's a progressive form of mental deterioration. About 10% of people over the age of 65 and nearly half of those over 85. It's a disease, and it's not a normal part of aging. Vascular dementia is also another kind of dementia, and this is the kind of cognitive deterioration that you see when a stroke happens. And this happens when fatty deposits collect in the blood that goes to the brain, and so you have a stroke. Retirement is one of the things that changes in your social life when you get into a late adulthood. It can be voluntary, meaning that you decide, or you could be laid off. And people who retire from full-time work sometimes continue working part-time, either paid or voluntarily. Another social change that often happens in late adulthood is becoming a grandparent. And many people would probably tell you that being a grandparent is just as good, if not better, as being a parent, because the relationship is usually very relaxed. It's a close relationship. However, one sad trend in the United States is that increasing numbers of grandparents are taking on the major responsibility of actually raising their grandchildren. There's a lot of stereotypes about older people's living arrangements. One is that they should live with their children, and another has them in a nursing home. And then some people say they should buy a condo in Florida. But on the contrary, most older people are independent and they're self-reliant. They can live and function just as well as they normally do in their own home. Most are financially independent and they own their own home. Most remain in their hometowns, and nearly 30% of older people will spend some time in a nursing home, but people living in nursing homes are usually 80 or older. I mean, they're very old. Erik Erikson said that late adulthood's challenge is ego integrity, and this is the belief that life is meaningful and worthwhile even when physical abilities are not what they used to be. Even though I'm sure for you, sitting there in your nice little 16, 17-year-old body, being in your 70s is just a horror story for you. But most people in their 70s are happy with their lives. There is a correlation between socioeconomic status and health, meaning if you have a little bit of money and you were able to retire and you're doing okay, then your health is usually better because you have more access to doctors, etc. And older people really do benefit from social support and feelings of personal well-being. Oh, I'm sorry. 2 things about getting on in life. Focusing on what is important, whether you believe that's your family or your spirituality, whatever. That's an important component of successful aging. And a positive outlook about life is another component. And challenging oneself, making yourself get up and go for a walk, or making yourself go out to lunch. It's very easy when you get older and you get tired to just kind of wallow in your own self-pity. But something that's very important about maintaining a healthy body and a healthy mind is to, get out there. Make yourself get out there. And again, keywords: adjusting, learning, establishing, shifting, maintaining. And the last thing we're going to talk about is death and dying. Stages of dying are, this is a theory that says that stages of dying include denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But that's highly criticized. Dying people need support, they need pain relief, and they need a dignified end. Nobody wants to go out, in a really ugly way. And funerals are there to help the living celebrate the life of the deceased. There was a psychiatrist named Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she said that there's 5 stages through which many dying people pass, and these again are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But a lot of people say no, this isn't true. Psychologist Edwin Schneidman has found that feelings about dying don't follow a particular sequence necessarily. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Every person is different, and that's another problem with the theory. Every person is different. Every person is going to die in a different way with different people around them, and so we shouldn't try to pigeonhole them into this stage theory. Dying with dignity. You need to feel cared for and supported, and pain relief. They need to feel secure, self-confidence. Some dying people like to enter a hospice, which is a home-like place where they're just receiving physical and emotional support to help them cope with this terminal illness, whether it's cancer or heart disease, whatever. Hospice can also come to your house, and this is pretty common, especially in the South. There's many companies that will come to your house and set you up in like a hospital bed or whatever, so you can still get the medical care that you need, and the nurse will come visit you. However, they're not trying to actively cure you or treat you. Euthanasia is illegal in most states. Some people really do support it. They say that, they say that if somebody wants to die, then they deserve to die the way that they want to die. Nobody should tell them that they can't. And many people write living wills, and these are legal documents in which a person's request to be allowed to die rather than be kept alive by an artificial means is very common. Somebody said a long time ago that psychologists have tended to overlook end-of-life issues, but we can't afford to overlook them anymore. And I do think, if somebody gets told that they have terminal cancer and then they only have like 6 months to live, I think a psychologist is probably a pretty good bet to help them kind of cope with what's going on. The funeral is a traditional way to acknowledge that a member of the community has died, and these reflect religious beliefs and cultural practices. So funerals change from one culture to another. And people who are bereaved are in mourning over the person that has died. And these are some good quotes about life. Age is an issue of mind over matter, and if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Mark Twain said that. The idea is to die young as late as possible, and none are so old as those who have outlived enthusiasm. So those are some good quotes to end the unit. Thanks, guys.